Razorback Nation, welcome back into another Sunday afternoon of your Razor recap, where we're going to talk Arkansas winning the 2024 AutoZone Liberty Bowl. We're going to talk about some transfer portal additions and some things like that, and we're going to hit a little bit of basketball news too as well. And before we get started, you can't forget your Razor recap and Hawgs on the Hill is brought to you by Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. Check them out today. If you're in Northwest Arkansas, you can even check out the Core Brewery Tap Room, where you can get Scarlet Letter in all of their various flavors. And you can't forget about Jared's Kickin' Sauce, the perfect blend of sweet and spice to transform any meal. Whether you're grilling burgers, roasting chickens, or just need a snack-worthy dip for crackers, Jared's Kickin' Sauce makes bland food good and good food great. Don't settle for ordinary. Kick it up a notch with Jared's Kickin' Sauce, your go-to sauce for every occasion. Grab your bottle now at kickinsauce.com and let the flavor party begin. And we'll just jump in right here. The big thing on social media today, especially Twitter, X, whatever you prefer to call it these days, is the whole incident with Fernando Carmona, the Arkansas lineman that supposedly purposely stepped on a player's ankle from Texas Tech, CJ Bakersville. He put out a tweet early today about how could have ended his career, that wasn't a great move. And I mean, I think we can all agree here that that's not a great look, and you probably shouldn't do that. But you're in the heat of a game, you're in the middle of a game. Sometimes you're not thinking it all the way through, and that's been the talk today. And eventually this afternoon, Fernando Carmona posted to his Twitter page. He said he'd like to apologize for his actions last Friday night in the Liberty Bowl. He let my emotions get away from me. I have nothing but respect for Texas Tech and the game of football. I do apologize to my team and coaches. I'm not that kind of player, and we'll learn from this. If you've seen anything today, he's been kind of dragged through it all today by various people, whether it be sports personalities, former players, you name it, they probably mentioned it. Your thoughts on that, Austin? I know you put out an article earlier today, and if you want to recap for the people that might haven't had a chance to check that out yet.
Yeah. So, okay, start off completely unacceptable, right? I know you get heated in the moment, and maybe something happened plays earlier, but you can't go out and intentionally hurt somebody like that. It's just not one. It's not a good look on the university. It's not a good look on him. We don't know even how it's going to affect his draft stock, if it does at all. But with the amount of NFL guys, scouts, and former players, analysts tweeting about it, I mean, it's gonna impact him a lot. So stupid decision by him. Absolutely just gross, right? But more than one thing can be true at the same time. The second one is probably the most egregious, is that people are overreacting a lot. Like, okay, so you're telling me a guy who intentionally tried to hurt somebody, because that's what it looks like, right? And he apologized for it. So I'm not going too far, of a stretch to say that it was intentional. You're saying that means he should go to jail, right? You see all these posts, by people with thousands of followers. He should be arrested for assault. He should never play a down of football again. He should be banned from sports forever. I'm like, are you kidding me? Do you know who Ndamukong Suh is? Like, are you kidding me? No. Like, back up. I haven't seen this type of reaction for a college player of any sport since Brandon Miller. And Brandon Miller, if you don't remember, was caught up in with that murder case where there was a gun in the car with him and someone came and got him, a whole bunch of stuff. People were thinking that he actually killed somebody. And this is on the level of the reaction to that. Like, what the hell is going on with y'all, right? It doesn't make any sense. So, one, that's crazy. You have guys like Kyle Long, a former NFL pro guy, who tweeted, obviously in jest, hey, this deserves the firing squad. Like, grow the hell up, bro. Like, make a joke all you want, but cool it with the language like that. You literally had a presidential candidate nearly get his head blown off because people are talking crap on Twitter. Like, you don't understand that and I'm sorry I'm going off on it, but you don't understand that social media has real effects out in real life. No matter what you think, it's going to have effects for someone else, right? You're not responsible for whatever that other person does, but you should try and be careful with what you say on the internet, especially with people who have 300, 500, 600, 700,000 followers. All right. That's the first one. The second one, which isn't as big of a deal, but it's just something for me. CJ Baskerville, like, obviously he's fine, right? He got up and played. He's not hurt. So why didn't you take care of it in the game? Like, you had 2 minutes to go figure out how to get another cheap shot on him, right? I'm not saying you need to go cheap shot him, but like, take care of it between the whistles. Go give him a big hit and, talk bad about his mama. Like, stop taking it to Twitter and letting the Twitter mob fight your battles for you. That's ridiculous. People calling him a victim. Like, he's not hurt. He got an owie. I'm sorry, you got a bruise. My bad. Like, grow up. That's my piece, and that's what I'm going to stick with. Like,
I was about to say,
also, okay, one more point. We're talking about all this. We're talking about this like it's murder, but then you have Ollie Gordon and you have Trevor Etienne, who had DUIs this summer and got to play every single game. But you don't see people. Look at Georgia football. Like, are you kidding me? Georgia football's over there having DUIs week after week, and then Carmona gets crucified by people on social media because he stepped on a guy's ankle. Like, nah, y'all need to calm down. Like, it's disgusting what he did, but y'all need to calm down too. We need to take Baskerville's advice and do better. That's what I'm saying. Everybody needs to do better.
Right. And that's the thing. Yeah, we're not condoning this anyway. It shouldn't have happened. That was a bad decision by Carmona. But at the end of the day, he apologized for it. Yes, that's not going to take care of everything. But if you look at it too, and it's a point we talked about before we started up here, there's a highly, highly chance that Baskerville probably would have said nothing about this if Texas Tech wins that football game.
Yeah. And I can't say for sure. And if you ask him, he's going to say, obviously, yes, because it looks bad if he said no. But, I mean, it wasn't – he got up and played. He was fine. It wasn't as big as a deal as what everyone's making it out to be. And it's a bigger deal on Carmona's character than the actual action was on the field. Right? Like, it's a bigger hit to him. And I am very disappointed with how he handled himself. So I'm glad he's apologized, but boy, that's a hard thing to shake off when you get to the league. And if you don't have the skill like Sue, you're not going to be able to, survive that type of stigma. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I hope he can right that wrong throughout this season, but we'll see.
Yeah. With that, we'll move on here, and we'll jump into Arkansas wins the Liberty Bowl. I mean, Arkansas finishes with a winning season, 7-6 on the year. Yes, you'd like to see a better record, but I mean, I was pleasantly surprised and pleased with how Arkansas played in the Liberty Bowl. I mean, where was this team for a majority of this season? I mean, yeah, you're playing Texas Tech, but they didn't have a ton of players missing from this Liberty Bowl compared to, what Arkansas had, relatively speaking there. And on top of that, you had some guys, quote unquote, break out for potentially next season and the next few years for Arkansas. And you had a great performance by Taylon Green, one of his probably better performances of the season so far, coming out, going 11-21, throwing for 341 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then adding 81 yards on the ground and a touchdown as well. Wins MVP of the game. And I mean, if you can see more of this Taylon Green next year, the success for Arkansas, I think, is going to be there.
Yeah. Hey, look what happens when Taylon Green has an offensive line that protects him, right? Like, what have I been saying all year is he needs an offensive line that helps him. 341 yards. The completion percentage wasn't great, and there wasn't a lot of drops. It was just, errant throws here and there, or something that wasn't quite on target, or a great decision. But still, 2 touchdowns, and each one of those touchdowns were like 40 yards long at least. One of them is the longest touchdown in Arkansas history, longest passing touchdown in Arkansas history. So yeah, no, that was a lot better than what I thought. Like I expected it to be a low scoring game, and I expected Arkansas to lose. I predicted them to lose, because they were missing just so much. I did not know the quality of depth that Arkansas had, especially at wide receiver. We can't go this long without talking about Desmond James, right? First catch of his collegiate career, 94-yard touchdown. Like, that's insane. And, I saw someone wrote, they said, Desmond James is what we thought Isaiah Centennial was going to be. Now, you can't say that right now because it was against the worst defense in the Big 12, right? You can't really say that. But, he looked good. Not just the stats, right? He had 137 yards on 3 catches for a touchdown. Let's see.
Plus, a lot of people forget.
Yards after catch, 92 yards. That's insane. So, that is going to be huge going forward for Arkansas. And it's not just that sideline, it's just the way that he played. One, he's fast. We knew he was fast coming in, and when they just barely got him at the end of the 2024 cycle, I believe, or 2023 cycle. But
he was a late addition to that class.
Right. But there was two passes over on the far sideline that he caught that were just great. Like one, he jumped up, I don't know, a couple feet and had outstretched his arms and just pulled it down and took a hit with it too. And I'm just like, where has this been? What the heck is going on? So that's super. I don't mean to be like drinking Kool-Aid already, but that was awesome. And I'm starting to feel a little bit more excited for next season compared to what I was, a week ago.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, I didn't know this until, looking it up after the game, people were talking about, he's a true track athlete. We talk about track speed all the time. You saw it on full display on that big catch he had. But he actually won the North Carolina State Championship in the 100-meter dash.
Right.
And, got named Outstanding Offensive Player of the game. Like you said, it's crazy. And I've been seeing people jokingly be like, we've had Desmond James all season and we chose to play Tyrone Broden just to drop balls. It's hard to necessarily say that, but it's like you see this in this game. Yes, it's against the Big 12 team and the team that was dead last in defense, but that speed, speed at the end of the day. So you can't think about what if he maybe would have played a few more snaps this season, things like that. And so, heck of a game by him to come out and, not to mention on your first reception of your college career, you take it for, the longest reception in school history. That's something that he's going to remember, for the rest of his life there. You had Isaac Tesla come out, have himself a decent game, 3 catches, 107 yards as well. Unfortunately, had that touchdown called back because his foot tapped out of bounds right at the 1. CJ Brown, the true freshman that, we saw off and on this season, unfortunately have had that bad fumble against Texas, but he went 4 catches for 50 yards. And then Tyrell Reed Jr., running back that came up from the JUCO ranks that we didn't see a ton this year, took his only reception, 47 yards to the house for a touchdown as well. And we'll jump into Josh's question here. He said, why didn't we use that running back before? And I'm going to assume he's referring to either Rodney Hill or Tyrell Reed. You had Jaquin Jackson. That's pretty much for the most part your answer. You had Jaquin Jackson. You used Rodney Hill some, didn't you? He got banged up a little bit there in the middle of the season. Is why. But as far as Tyrell Reed Jr., I mean, probably just snap share because Braylon Russell too. You had some snaps there throughout the year that he played a decent amount. Rodney Hill's already announced he's coming back next year. I think that kind of is already assumed, but the day after the bowl game was kind of made public by some sports reporters. But Rodney Hill went 8 carries for 81 yards, averaging 10 yards a carry. Braylon Russell, 20 carries in this game. Your workhorse, kind of your short down and distance. He had a touchdown himself. That's what you're going to see the game plan is for Braylon Russell. Is he's going to be for the most part, your goal line back 100%. He takes it in from 1 yard out to score a touchdown. But also he's your, late in the game kind of let's grind it out back. He's bigger, tougher, not necessarily tougher, but bigger and more durable, if you will, compared to maybe Rodney Hill and Tyrell Reed. They can take a lot more beating, between the tackles, kind of just trying to run that clock and get those, tough nitty gritty yards. But 20 carries for 50 yards, and then Tyrell Reed had 1 carry for 8 yards in this game, and then of course that big touchdown reception.
Right. And so, yeah, you had guys that were in front of them. And I don't know how you would convince me or anyone in the fan base really that either one really needed to start over DeBinion and Braylon. And yeah. I mean, DeBinion, I've been high on DeBinion forever. I really think I'm really upset with how his career ended at Arkansas. It just kind of, it started really good and then just kind of fluttered away, which sucks. I wish he were a little bigger. That probably would have helped, but it's whatever. He's gone now. But still, I don't know. I don't know if they're the future either. Because Rodney Hill, he's like a Traylon Smith. He's the same body type, same type of back, and so is Reed. Right, they're the exact same type. So I don't even know if they'll get a whole lot of playing time next year. Hill will, right? Rodney Hill will a lot. But I really think they're probably going to go between Washington, the new guy coming from New Mexico
right? State.
Yeah, and then Braylon Russell. It'll be, it's just that's the way that the game is. You got to have guys that are big. DeBinion's, yeah. He did fumble a lot. And, Jaquinta Jackson fumbled a lot too. So, I guess that's a good point. But still, DeBinion also had a problem with, like, after his freshman season, I don't know what happened with his eyes, but he just couldn't find the hole as well either, especially in on zone plays. It didn't work out as well, and I don't know why.
Well, if you think back to last season, when he had the opportunity to kind of step up and be that lead back whenever, Rocket was hurt for a majority of the season, his last season here, he had the chance to step up and kind of, every time didn't really have tremendous success. To be fair, we couldn't run the ball hardly at all that season with, the offensive line issues and everything like that. And, like you said, and I think DeBinion had some problems staying healthy as well. We saw him miss a good chunk of this season due to injury, maybe some other issues. And I think what got everybody for Rashad DeBinion was how, he came out end of last year and was like very anti-portal. And then you see him jump in the portal this year. And maybe this was it's the phrase they like to use. The writing was on the wall. You have Rodney Hill coming back. You've got Braylon Russell coming back. You sign Malik Washington. There's not just really room for him. And hopefully he has a good career wherever he goes. But, like you said, from the flashes you saw his freshman year, not sure what happened, every year following that.
Yeah, so I don't know. What I'm more, wondering is why we didn't start Jasmine James more, right? That was just insane how good he looked out there. Now, you don't know what he did in practice. You don't know what Tyrone Broden did in practice either. So we saw some clips and stuff from Broden, in preseason. We knew the type of talent he had. He just, for whatever reason, whenever he got in games, he just couldn't catch anything. So,
well, and I think it's one of those things that, people say, and I think Pittman mentioned that going into the season, guys, they can practice. You have some guys that maybe practice okay, and then perform well in games, or vice versa. But he said when guys split in games, you either get better or get worse. You don't stay the same. And I think this might have been an instance where Desmond James saw his opportunity in the bowl game. He needed to set. It was kind of the next man up type of situation. His number got called, and he took full opportunity of that. I mean, and he brings some good size for next year's wide receiver room. He's 6'2", 196, so he brings great size and speed. Because we were talking about before the Liberty Bowl and talking about all the transfer portal guys were coming in, and all of them being under 6 foot and things like that. Well, here's a guy, Desmond James, 6'2", 196, great size and speed. To pair along with some of these other guys, and some guys we're going to talk about in a minute. But
hey, think about this. You have Omega Blake one end, you have Courtney Crutchfield on the other end, and then you have Desmond James as your slot guy. I mean, that sounds pretty dangerous to me. I don't know about you, but that sounds like, hey, I'm excited for next season. So yeah, it's getting me there. I'm telling you. Haven't totally drinking the Kool-Aid yet, but it's getting me there.
I was about to say, you saw a lot of positives from this game that you can take into the next season. And, looking at it on the flip side of that, I feel like, with some of the players that we had lost, our defense performed really well this game. They performed great in some key situations. They had, several stops they got and forced, turnovers on downs, forcing takeaways, things that Arkansas really didn't do this season. And there's only so much you kind of can take from this bowl game. Everything you got to take with a grain of salt, if you will. But we forced Texas Tech on 4th down, 0 of 2. They were 5 of 12 on 3rd down. We held them to 280 passing yards, 217 rushing yards. So their first half, they put up some yards in the first half, but not necessarily. Second half, defense came in and shut them down, held them to 7 points. 2 interceptions. I think that's the big one that I really like to see was, you had Marquise Cuddy Robinson and Miguel Mitchell both getting a takeaway in this game, which is big.
Miguel Mitchell looked good too.
Yeah, and he's a guy that you're going to have coming back next year. So I think you saw a lot of promise on this defense as well. Xavier Story that's coming back led you in tackles, 10 total, 5 solo. Miguel Mitchell, Steven Dix Jr., he's coming back, 7 tackles, 3 solo. Hudson Clark had a decent game for his last game as a Razorback with 6 tackles. Cam Ball, 5 tackles. Nico Slaughter, 4. So you saw a lot of promise there. D-line looked pretty good. Quincy Rhodes, the rotation between him, Cam Ball, Ian Gaffard. You saw Kiwi Rose, Danny Solly, the transfer from BYU that didn't play a ton this season. So I think there's a decent amount of things that you can take positives away from this game.
Yeah. Who else came out today and said he was entering the draft. Anthony Switzer, he played lights out yesterday too. I don't know if it showed up on the stat sheet. I can go look though. But he, like that one hit that he had there on the sideline, boy, it was close to being a targeting penalty, but they didn't throw the flag. And
I was about to talk about bringing the boom there.
Dude. Yeah, he smoked him. Like, dang. It's like, hey, welcome to SEC football. But I don't know. There was some parts. Like I was actually really disappointed in the defensive line. They're all young, but they got like one sack. They didn't have a whole lot of push. Guys like Ian Jaffard, he didn't get pushed. I mean, the guy's like 370, 380 pounds, so he's not going to get pushed easily, but he got his shoulders turned a lot. And that opened up some big holes right through the middle of the line. And like he's got to get stronger there, and he's got to get quicker. So he's gonna have to do some work this off season. But I feel like he could do better than what he did last night once he gets a little bit more time in the weight room, a little more time conditioning, all that stuff, under his belt. But I was a little bit underwhelmed with it. Jude Cause looked good, and so I like on my list. Yeah, a safety, right? 2 safeties in the game too. How about that? I mean, like I don't know if you weren't entertained by that, then I don't know what you were watching. Unless you're a Tech fan, then you're probably not entertained by that game. But I was low key impressed with the secondary a little bit. I thought they were going to be a lot worse than they were.
Yeah,
and they still had some bad, like that touchdown. I think it was their first touchdown. No, it wasn't the first touchdown, but it led to their first touchdown. The tight end who did it. Was that the 4th down that they stopped them on the goal line? I think it was. So I don't know what I'm talking about. But there's the play with their tight end just right down the seam and caught him for like a 30, 40 yard play. And that kind of stuff, it's got to get cleared up. And hopefully once they get these guys over the summer and get the new guys transferring in, they'll clean it up a little bit. I don't see a whole lot changing between this year's defense and next year's defense, especially with the defensive line. Like I said, that really it kind of disappointed me with those new guys. Now, again, maybe another year in the weight room is going to help out, but it just we're going to be missing Landon Jackson, I think. Quite a bit.
Next year's gonna be waiting to see who steps up. Talking about the secondary, I did notice one time you had an instance. Selman Bridges got burned once.
Yeah, that was
unfortunately. But as a whole, like you said, I think they performed surprisingly better than what a lot of people thought. Oscar here says, flipping back to the offense, his only concern is although we may have 3 to 4 strong receiver matchup problems, he never saw Taylor Green do a consistent job of checking down to his second and third reads. I'll agree there, for the most part, because you saw him force a lot of balls to Andrew Armstrong. You saw that. And then, I think you saw him use his check downs a couple to your running backs every now and then. And so, yeah, I mean, that's one thing he's going to have to improve next year in the Petrino offense is, looking at those second, third options after, we don't know who's going to be your number one. You can assume could be Blake, could be, I don't know right now, honestly, because you're losing a lot. We're going to have to see what, spring ball looks like and kind of who kind of is the talk there. And then what it looks like going into fall camp as well, because you could have some guys leave in that spring window, but right now it's that number one job essentially is up in the air.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. He looked a lot cleaner in this game. Now, obviously, Texas Tech has a horrible passing defense, so you have to take that into account. But he looked confident. And even when he did get pressure, he was confident. That one play where they were saying he looked like Lamar Jackson, he went out to the right, and that defensive tackle was right there in front of him. He just shook him. He fell straight to the ground. I mean that you can't even go back to school after that, dude. But that
and that was a great play too, because then he sets his feet and just fires that pass.
Yeah, and he just looked calm. He looked more calm in this game than any game that I saw him in this season, right?
I agree.
And
Yeah.
half of it is because he wasn't running for his life every play. Now that has to do with, maybe their defensive line isn't nearly as good as other SEC defensive lines. That's probably what it had to do with. But if we can get guys that can match up well with those defensive lines in the SEC, I feel like he could do pretty well. I feel like he could. The thing is, he also made good decisions too. Before, there was, I think it was it was in the second half. There was a bootleg where it was a naked bootleg, and he's going out and everyone's covered up. Maybe, I don't know, but you can't see anything. But there's like 15, 20 yards of green grass in front of him. No one within 30 yards of him. And instead of trying to, force something, he just goes and he takes an easy 15. Like that's the type of decision making I want to see from him. And before, I would feel like he would try to, make something happen with his arm. It's almost like he's trying to prove something instead of going out there and playing his type of ball. So,
yeah, I agree there. I'm just saying here, it says, what do you guys think about the freshman receiver from Warren coming in? Any chance Pittman lets him get on the field as a true freshman? He has great size and comes from Arkansas's wide receiver high. And he's talking about Antonio Jordan from Warren, Arkansas, historically known for putting great receivers to Arkansas. He comes in, he brings great size, 6'6", 230, was rated as a 3-star guy. Right now, I would say I'm not 100% if he's enrolling early or not, but if he comes in early and gets work in spring ball, there's a good chance. I'm not going to rule anything out just because you have a lot of production that you have to replace. And if he can come out here as a true freshman and beat some of these other guys out, sure. And I think that's what Pittman's going to want to see. I don't necessarily think he might just shut him down because he's a true freshman, but you're going to have to see what he does against some of these other guys. And can he contend with like guys that have been around a little bit, like your Omega, Blake, Raylan Sharp, other guys that you're bringing in that have been around college football for a little bit. And I think that's going to be the thing that you got to look at.
Now, the thing that because they're going to be short on tight ends, I think. I don't know how many they're going to get in the portal. They'll probably do something to make the numbers look good, but considering, what the options are, who knows? They might just have guys to come in to fill the numbers. And with size like that, 6'6", 230, it's not going to be a hard jump to go to tight end. So I'm not putting any ideas or saying I have knowledge about it, but I wouldn't doubt seeing him, switch to tight end.
You saw that with,
especially with like Shamar Easter, right? And Shamar Easter most likely is moving to wide receiver. So, that's almost the same body type as Shamar Easter was. So we'll see. I don't know. I think receiver is probably going to be kind of deep.
And I think it kind of is going to. I think it's going to be kind of like Anthony says here. Coordinators determine who sees the field, and I think that's the point here. Is Petrino will see if he grasps that playbook and catches the ball consistently in practice. That's what you're going to want to see from your personnel. And that's going to be probably a big determining factor with a lot of these receivers. Can they come in and grasp the Petrino playbook, which we've all known has been, been said in the past, and I've talked to some, former Arkansas receivers that said, that is a tough playbook because, other than, you may have your X receiver, your Y receiver, Petrino wants you to know all the routes, all the positions, be able to come in and shift around. So, that I think that's going to be a big part of it is can he come in, learn this playbook pretty quickly, pick it up, and then, show that he can catch the ball consistently and, be a guy that they can count on. And, I think that's going to be the ask for all these guys because you're going to have guys that this playbook, for the most part, is going to be new to most of these guys. The only guy that I might give an edge up is Raylan Sharp just because he played for Bobby Petrino before, so he has experience in that system. But still, at the end of the day, all of these guys are coming in fresh on, level playing field, if you will. I mean, a guy like maybe Desmond James that's been here this year will have a little bit of a leg up just because even though he didn't play a ton, he had a great game in the bowl game, and then has been practicing with that offense all year. So, other than that, I think it's wide open again to, who steps up and shows out in practice and shows that they can be counted on.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's going to be hard for a true freshman to come in and do that. I think it's probably going to be kind of hard for Courtney Crutchfield and Omega Blake to come in and do it. At least Omega Blake's been out and he's encountered a whole lot of different offenses. Speaking of, I don't know if anybody said this, but that whole Bobby Petrino to Charlotte thing looks a little suspicious now, doesn't it? I'm just saying, like, that happened and Omega Blake was there in Charlotte. Who knows who he had lunch with after his interview? I don't know. I'm not trying to start anything, but suspicious. Hey, if everybody else is out there messing with or what's the word?
Tampering, quote unquote tampering.
Yeah, tampering. I mean, screw it, dude. Look, Bobby Petrino. If anybody is going to believe Bobby Petrino is going to leave after 1 year, or a coordinator is going to leave after 1 year, it's Bobby Petrino. So why not send him out to do the dirty work? So yeah, no. Anyway, yeah, exactly. Anthony's completely right. He's gonna have to learn the playbook and get that situated. And the thing is, if indeed he does switch because of his body type, that's a completely different position he's gonna have to learn. So yeah. I don't know. And he's from Warren, so he's I don't know what it is about the water there, but they make good receivers. So hopefully he turns out. And I've heard from people that he is much better than what his star ranking is, but he has a 3-star ranking because he doesn't go to camps.
That's what I was going to say too, is that he wasn't one of those guys that just went out to all these camps that, I think, those camps cost a decent amount of money. So, I mean, it's hard to necessarily get into all these camps. And so, like, to your point, he might be a little underrated because, he didn't get out there in the public eye, if you will, in all these camps. And, he still had offers from like South Carolina, Florida State, other bigger programs. So it's not like he's just an in-state guy we're signing because he's from Arkansas and you're hoping you can take a chance on a guy. He has the talent and the abilities. He just maybe wasn't as put in the media circle as some of these other guys.
It's like Traylon Burks. I mean, Traylon Burks probably should have been a 5-star, at least a borderline 5-star, but he was out there hunting hogs. He wasn't going to the camps either. So, yeah, it's one of those things. I think that might be one of the reasons why we get so many of these good receivers in Warren is because a lot of them don't do the camps. They don't go out there and do stuff like that. So they don't get recruited as much, and Arkansas just gets a steal with them. And there's not many cities like that in Arkansas right now. So that's one of the hotbeds, and you got to keep that pipeline going. Like I said, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the water or the food they have there. But they make some good receivers. Now, like I said, it's young, got to learn the playbook, but I have hope for him. And I don't think people are talking about him enough.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that might surprise some people and bust on the scene. But at the end of the day, kind of Arkansas ends the season on as positive note as you can give, winning their bowl game, finishing with a winning record, all those things that you want to see. We all would love that record to be added, 2 to 3 more wins to it. But at the end of the day, you win it and you look forward to next season and to hopefully you see improvement next year. I think that's the biggest thing. And as far as when you're talking improvement for next season, you got to talk about the transfer portal. I mean, we still have some additions that, since we last had our show that we got to talk about. And, one of those first ones is, Arkansas brought in some offensive line depth, a guy that probably won't necessarily start next year. But you bring in, we stole a player from Ole Miss, offensive lineman, Kavion Broussard. He comes in 6'6", 308. He didn't appear in any games for Ole Miss last season. He was a 3-star prospect. He has the ability to play tackle and guard. He chose Arkansas over offers from Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, Arkansas State, Miami, Marshall, and a few other schools. So he's a guy that Pittman mentioned, just bringing in guys for depth. And he said that's what they've kind of lacked the past couple of seasons, is having additional linemen with a whole roster kind of build and limitations and things. And that's what he said they're changing this year. He said they're going to add more offensive linemen to this position group. And I think this is what you're going to see. So he's going to be a depth issue. Transplanted Texan says, first-time listener here. Welcome in. Thank you for joining the show. But he's a guy that's going to come in, I think, and he's going to more or less be a depth piece unless he can, has some crazy development over the offseason. But, I mean, I think that's what you're going to expect out of a guy like Kevin Broussard.
Yeah. And, I mean, I don't think the guys that started on the inside for Arkansas are the future necessarily, but I feel like they could actually, maybe this is going to get their confidence up enough to where they can really bring some competition to that room. That's really what they've been missing the last few years. They don't have any competition because they haven't had great recruiting. So hopefully this can get that stuff. We can get that stuff going and maybe get some. Maybe one of them can surprise us. Like what's his name? Brenham.
Kobe Brenham, yeah.
Brenham, the kid from Fort Smith. He looked good.
I mean, he
who
had
was
a
the center
decent
last
game.
night? Because who was the center last night? It wasn't Edmondson or whoever we. It was Brooke. See, I thought that they had somebody else different on the depth chart than we talked about.
I think it might have been an Orr, but
okay.
He's the one that played. And I was
right.
pleasantly surprised. You didn't really have any snap
good.
issues.
Yeah, that looked, I don't know, maybe he snapped in high school some, but that looked good. Like, holy cow. I didn't really pay attention to the blocking all that much. But the snaps, I mean, Nichols, he didn't snap that well each game. So I don't know, man. They just surprised me altogether. Everything surprised me. The only thing that didn't surprise me is the second quarter where they gave up 16 points.
That's fair. I mean, that's normal for Arkansas at this point.
Arkansas.
Yeah. I mean, but for being a redshirt sophomore and getting his first snaps at center, Brooks Edmondson did great. He brings great size to that center position, 6'4", 313. So I mean, yeah, nothing to complain about. And it's one of those things where at that center spot, if you don't notice him or notice any issues with him, that's a good sign, because it's like they talk about, center is probably one of those positions on the offensive line that for the most part you can make do with sliding somebody over as long as they can get the ball cleanly to the quarterback and decently block. You're more worried about your guard and tackle spot than you are at center. So, I mean, when there's nothing to talk about him or to pull from the game that, made him noticeable, that's a good thing. Transplanted Texan says, what's the story with Desmond James? Heard he was on special teams but couldn't consistently run a route a month ago. Do y'all have any further insight? So we're kind of like you are here. He just popped up. I mean, we were talking about how he has that track speed. He was a late addition to last year's class. In high school, he won the 100-meter state championship in North Carolina. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of here all on the same page as far as, I mean, not sure why he didn't get more playing time than he did. I mean, if he can produce like this, why not? But we'll have to see. I would expect him to be, a guy that gets reps next year with the first team, and hopefully we see more reps from him. Bobby Andrews says here, we talked about him at 6'6", 240, and Tony Jordan he definitely will be in the rotation. He'll be the next Hog great wide receiver. I would love that to be true. Would love to see another Warren wide receiver flourish here at Arkansas. And, talking about transfer portals and talking about wide receivers, we'll jump over here and talk about, I mean, he committed, a little over, 4 or 5 days ago. Omega Blake, he was the guy that a lot of people were saying Arkansas needs to get him. He needs to be a guy that Arkansas gets to help bring in depth and experience this wide receiver room that's, for the most part, losing everybody. And before the breakout game of Desmond James, you weren't sure who else you had in that wide receiver room other than maybe C.J. Brown and the guys you already had committed from the transfer portal. But Omega Blake is he's a former SEC receiver. He has experience before. Prior to Charlotte, he played at South Carolina. He comes in at 6'2", 180. He is a redshirt junior. Finished the season 32 catches, 795 yards, 9 touchdowns. Comes in with 1 year of eligibility. Pro Football Focus had him graded out as a 74.7 offensive grade, a 77.5 pass grade, and 52.7 run block on 373 snaps. His best performance last season came against Florida Atlantic, where he had 5 catches for 205 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's a guy that has explosive ability. When he was at South Carolina, he had 20 catches for 251 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did have a 5-catch, 86-yard outing against, at the time, number 1 Georgia in the 2023 season. So he's had some success against SEC level games. Transplant Texan here says, dazzling Desmond James and Omega Blake sounds like a dynamic duo at wide receiver. I agree. I mean, these names is fantastic. But I mean, this is a good get for this Arkansas wide receiver room.
Yeah. Trying to pull up my article on it. But he is going to be a deep threat type of guy. If I'm not mistaken, he leads the country in yards per catch for people that have over 30 receptions. But I can pull that up in just a second and get that actual stat. But yeah, he's got good hands. He's got pretty good athleticism. He could be a number 1 guy in the SEC. I feel like there's going to be some competition for that. And he could be like an Andrew Armstrong type of guy, but I really do think he'll be more of a deep threat type of person. But we'll see.
Well, and they talk about with him too, his hands, the way he catches the ball, it's different than some other receivers as far as letting it go into the body. He actually has really soft, great hands that he can catch this ball with. And if you see some of the tape, that's very clear. And I'm like you. If he can make that step forward and, he has that experience in the SEC, like Bobby says here, he has the chance to be a monster wide receiver in the system as long as his line can be better next year. And I think that's what you want to see. You can't have another Andrew Armstrong where, you lead the SEC in receiving yards, but you have 1 touchdown. I mean, you've got to have more scores, and I think that's what you want to see out of him. And I mean, like we talked about, Transplant Texan here says the O-line has to be better, and that's 100% true. And I think you are going to see some improvement with some of the guys we brought in. But he says, I would say the future of this offensive line is more in their performance. Green will not be able to do anything if they cannot block, and that's true. And the same for the running backs as well. But at the end of the day, if you give Taylor Green time, I think you're going to see more of what you saw last night, where he reads the field good, doesn't necessarily make a ton of mistakes, is able to throw it when he needs to throw. And like Austin mentioned earlier, when he sees that wide open grass, hey, just pick up a quick 15, no big deal, and not try to show off or do too much. Just play the game. Be cool, calm, and collected like you kind of saw him last night. And I think you could see a lot more success out of this Arkansas team next year. But that's a lot of ifs to talk about.
Right. So that stat line, 24, he averaged 24.8 yards of reception, which is most by any receiver with more than 30 receptions or more. So like I said, he's going to be that deep guy, I feel. We won't have anybody that's tall like Broden was, but like we said, he didn't exactly work out anyway. But
Especially your closest in terms of heights is going to be, like we said, then Antonio Jordan at 6'6", or who knows what Shamar Easter does at 6'5", is if he moves over to this offensive or the wide receiver room.
Right, and I don't even know if Blake. I don't know what his yards after catch is either. So that's an interesting thing. I need to look it up, but he might be really good at yards after catch, especially. I mean, 24. He's got to have some good yards after catch if 20 he averages 24 yards of reception. That's just insane. But yeah, no, I think it's solid. I think it's really, really solid. I think it's probably better than the Kendrick Law. I think that's what his name was, the Alabama dude. I think it's a better pickup than that, mostly because of his height and because you see the production from him. You don't have to guess. You know this guy has produced before.
Exactly, and I think that's the biggest thing that this defense is going, or this wide receiver room is going to need next year, is guys that can produce. I mean, especially we keep going back to it, but it's hard to look at the fact that you're losing Andrew Armstrong, who led the SEC in receiving yards. You're losing Isaac Tesla, who didn't play a ton, but when he played, he had good lines. You're losing Isaiah Satania, who had you a decent amount of catches. You're losing Broden, who had trouble holding on the ball this year, but did make some big catches in different games. He had a couple big catches in that Tennessee game. So you're losing a ton of production there. And so I think that's where having a guy like Omega Blake that can come in, spent some time at South Carolina in the SEC, had a great year at Charlotte this year, can come in and, potentially come in and be that number one type of guy if he can translate his game. And I hate saying to the SEC level because he's been at that SEC, but kind of take what he does now and continue that at Arkansas.
Yeah. If he can do that, dude, big help to Arkansas, especially after losing the guys that they lost. Now, I don't know if you want to jump to the next guy yet.
I was about to say, let's go ahead and jump to the next guy. A guy that, Arkansas wanted to have on their roster this year, which he might have got playing time this year. Courtney Crutchfield makes us wait till Christmas Day to commit to Arkansas out of the transfer portal. We kind of knew, there's crystal balls out there. He was a lock to Arkansas, but everybody's like, well, what's taking so long? Don't know if he just wanted to kind of make a splash doing his commitment on Christmas Day or whatever, but he's a guy that he's headed home to Arkansas from Pine Bluff. His family's Arkansas through and through. Played in a couple games for Missouri this year, no stats. Comes in, he redshirted this year, 4 years of eligibility. I'm a guy that, was committed to Arkansas last year. A guy that, he decommitted, you bring Petrino in as your coordinator. First thing he does is he makes a visit to talk to Courtney Crutchfield. And, maybe that was too late in the game and put some question marks on his radar as far as, his opportunities at Arkansas, and decides to flip over to Coach Drink in Missouri. But he was behind some talented guys there, Theo Weiss, Luther Burden, no doubt that those are talented guys. But at the end of the day, decides he wants to come home and play for Arkansas. Maybe he went to Missouri and got his bag for a year, and then, he's coming back home to play for his home state team. Who knows? But I'm going to be glad to have him back.
Yeah, so I think you're correct. I think he saw the changing coordinators, and he was like, well, maybe I need to rethink this. And then he went with ended up going with whatever they're called, Missouri. Now, here's the cool thing is that I think he saw what he did with Andrew Armstrong and was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I can do this. Because here's the thing. There's a lot of people who think Armstrong's professional compass is CeeDee Lamb, right? He had a lot of the same attributes. He even kind of looked like him with the dreads and all that stuff. Or I think I don't want to call them dreads, but the hairstyle. And if you look at the scouting report on 247, I mean, what's his name? Crutchfield's comp is CeeDee Lamb as well. So maybe he's thinking, well, if he can make Armstrong look like this, why can't he make me look like this? And I'm going to give him at least 2 years. So that's the I think that's probably what he's thinking. Plus coming back home is probably got to have a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure he's probably excited, like you said, seeing what Andrew Armstrong did. And it'll be interesting to see. I think the talent's there. And I think this is what we're going to see next year is going to be the key. Transplant Texan says Taylor Green loses his safety net, Andrew Armstrong, 100%. You saw him 100% force some balls to Andrew Armstrong this year, but it's integral that he gets comfortable with a new wide receiver core. Hopefully, there's more growth during year 2 in Petrino's system. Green must use all of his wide receivers for success, and I agree. I mean, that's going to be something that these guys he's going to have to build the rapport with. And maybe he doesn't necessarily gravitate towards one. I mean, that's great. If you're going to have a number one, but you'd like to see some more diversity. That you saw a handful of games where Green spread the ball out a little bit more. But if you look at majority of the games this year, Andrew Armstrong has double-digit catches, and you have maybe 3 here, 2 there. I think you spread that out a little bit more with some of these guys who come in will be good. Bobby Andrews says, got a wide receiver from Auburn coming in for a visit on January 1st and an NC State guard at 6'6", 305 coming for a visit as well. So you're going to see a few more portal potential additions there. I know it closed, but for some teams like finishing bowl games and things, you get I think an extra few days to do your visits and whatever. But I'm just saying, also says, keep in mind Armstrong balled out with KJ and Enos' terrible offense as well. That is true. But I just think, don't want to get into comparisons here, but I think the dynamic ability with Petrino's offense is going to benefit these wide receivers. I mean, and we go back to, data is data at the end of the day. You look at the leap that when Petrino was here before that they made from year 1 to year 2. I mean, that was several years ago, and it's a little bit of a different game than it was back then. But at the end of the day, I think these receivers are excited to see what they could potentially do with Petrino, and that's probably one of the big reasons that factored in. Courtney Crutchfield decided to enter the transfer portal and come back home on top of this wide receiver room's wide open. We keep saying that. So he says, hey, I can come in here and potentially get a starting job.
Yeah. I hope that, like, if he comes in and he doesn't get a starting job, that he doesn't, get discouraged or anything. I think they've got a lot of guys they can play with, a lot of guys that they can, have some options there too. It's kind of like having, big guys who are athletic in basketball. So like having guys who can, play the 3, but also play the 5. And you can go big or you can go small, and you have that type of option. And I feel like they kind of have that with the receivers, especially if Shamar Easter moves over to receiver, and they still have Jordan coming in at 6'6". So they got guys who are as tall as 6'6" all the way down to 5'8". So they've got stuff to work with. They've got things that
wide range there.
So I don't know. I feel like I feel like coming in and thinking you're going to start right off the bat in an offense as complicated that would be foolish to think. But he does have a very good shot at coming in and starting right off the bat. The thing is, he probably would have started at Mizzou had he stayed. Because they didn't. Weiss is gone, right, and then Burden's gone. So yeah, I don't know. So maybe I don't know if that was much as a pull factor as seeing what Andrew Armstrong did under Petrino, and then making the decision to say, "Hey, I want a part of that too."
Right.
So,
yeah, I think that's the big thing to look at is there could be a lot of factors. I mean, but at the end of the day, I mean, you get to come home for your home state, play for a guy that you have the potential to have, a great season, and to see, all the spots essentially are wide open. So if you can come in here, like we talked about earlier, kind of with some of these other guys, if you can come in, perform well in practice, pick up the playbook, and develop that rapport with Taylor Green, I mean, that's your route to, seeing the field next season for any of these wide receivers. That's going to be key. And as far as, talking about rapport, it seems like that might already be, a step ahead for Desmond James with, what we saw. So it's exciting. Yeah. And like Bobby said, I remember that they had a window, but every team you get 5 days after your bowl game to whether you enter the transfer portal, whatever. So you've got 5 days, and with teams still constantly playing bowl games, you've got that time to go out and still visit. And Pittman said in his Liberty Bowl poll before the game, his presser, talking about how they're still going to go out there and get a few more depth guys in. I think he said he maybe wants 1 to 2 more offensive linemen for depth. And he said, I think maybe another linebacker, a couple safeties, and you still got to remember that if we don't get them right now, you've got that spring window for guys to come in as well. I mean, you saw us pick up a couple guys in that spring window last year to help fill out some depth. So that's something that you're going to have to keep an eye on, and we'll keep you updated on that as we hear more guys visiting. Guys are still constantly after bowl games deciding whether they're going to leave or go or, whatever it may be. So that's something to keep in mind. But yeah, at the end of the day, Arkansas, go ahead.
What I'm hoping to wait for is after all these playoff teams stop, that whenever they have people go in the portal, that Arkansas hits them up first, because you think about it, some of the best transfers we have come from those bigger schools like Sorry or my goodness, why can't I remember his name every time I think of him? Linebacker from Alabama.
Drew Sanders.
Geez. Yeah. So you got guys like that are bona fide dudes coming out of high school that didn't really get the playing time they wanted necessarily, or in Drew Sanders' example, because he got hurt and he couldn't crack that starting role again. That's what you need to look for. Guys that are in where you want to be. You got to get those guys that are in those teams, and they're going to have plenty of guys leaving after they play their last game. So, I really, really want them to go and get some defensive linemen if they can get some, especially some interior guys, some D tackles. That miss on the Georgia guy that went to USC that hurt a lot.
Yeah.
So
that was a big one that you really wanted.
Yeah. Hopefully they can get some guys that are that type of caliber going forward. And that's the thing. Offensive linemen and defensive linemen are tough to come by. Recruiting and the transfer portal, whenever you get to the NFL, it's because you need guys that are super big, that are super athletic, especially D tackles. D tackles are super hard to come by. Great ones anyway.
And it's like you look at the potential. The potential is there for some of these guys on the roster with their size. Now, whether, like we said, in the offseason, they can make improvements and, get to like the kind of like the guys you're talking about where they can be really factors in the game. That'll be kind of what you're looking for because, there's a ton of guys that are out there that are, they're great players, but they're just depth guys. You're going to have a lot of depth guys. But if you can just find that one or, two gems, if you will, that can kind of maybe be game changers, like a Landon Jackson type of guy that can be an off the edge guy. Or if you think a few years ago, the guy that we had that kind of came out of nowhere, Jonathan Ridgeway, he came in and on the D line and was a decent player for Arkansas as well. So There's some
Right.
of those guys that you can find, and if you can get them to that next level of play, it will be big.
Exactly. Like the kid from Abilene Christian. So I don't. We'll see if it happens. I don't think, especially with defensive linemen and linemen, I feel like it's harder to do that. But who knows? He might be another diamond in the rough. We'll see.
Yeah, 100%. So Arkansas finishes its football season 7-6, winning record. There's still going to be transfer portal moves made. Like Austin said, you still have these playoff teams that probably once they're done, you're going to see some guys exiting there, and maybe that'll be Arkansas's opportunity. Pigpen, glad to see you back in here, and I agree with you 100% here. This is something that you probably will see a change in next year. Is our right tackle has to have an overall rating of 48. Talking about Blackstock, he's got to be replaced ASAP. He either has to be replaced or he's going to have tremendous improvement in the offseason. But I think that's why you're seeing these linemen we brought in. Blackstock didn't turn out what you hoped he would be, and I think you're going to see some of these offensive linemen bring in, and you might see him as a backup or a depth piece next year, and probably is not going to be a starter for Arkansas next year.
Yeah, probably not. Which
Blackstock is a liability. He had some. I feel like he had some decent moments this year, but I think those were overshadowed by all the struggles that he had, and yeah. And then Bobby says here, Ian Giffard can be an All-American. If he loses 40 pounds and gets a lot quicker and stronger, and then David Oki will be dominant. Oki is that Abilene Christian guy that Austin just referenced. But yeah, I mean, like we said, the talent is there. Whether you can get them guys to take the steps they need to be to the next level, like as far as with Gafford getting some quicker, not letting his shoulders get turned, things like that. As you work on the offseason, that's going to be keys to look at. And I mean, not all hope's lost for next season. It's going to be tough. Next year's schedule is tough again. Not going to dive into a lot of that, but you see some potential and some promise with, what we've done in the portal with, some of these guys. Yeah, I mean, it's just we're going to have to wait and see. Who knows? By August, we're 100% drinking the Kool-Aid and excited again. That seems to be the pattern here, but who knows? We'll just have to see what the offseason holds. What we start hearing in spring ball, once, you're going to have some guys that are early enrollees that can come in and get in the weight room, get in the offseason program, and kind of get a leg up on maybe some of those guys that come in the summer.
Yeah. So we'll see. I think they got some guys that could, like Bobby says, Ian Giffard. I like Ian Giffard. I've told the story many times that Stan Pittman went to his recruitment, and the dude was doing handstands at that size. That's impressive. But he just needs to get a little quicker, and then he can almost be like that big kid from Florida. Forgot his name.
I know who you're talking about.
He's like a 400-pound dude too, and he a big boy. He's like 6'7", 6'8", 400
Well,
pounds.
did you see in the bowl game they lined him up as like a fullback?
Oh my God! You know what? I would just be like, y'all can have it. I'm sorry. I'm not. That's a business decision. I ain't taking it. No way.
Exactly. I saw that, some highlight clips of that. They gave him a couple carries on like some short yardage situations, and man, yeah, I'm like you. I'm gonna move out of the way. You can have it. I'm just saying, says facts, LOL, but hopefully he can clean up his pass blocking for next season. Talking about Blackstock, maybe. Who knows? We'll have to see. I'm not going to put money on that. Bobby says Oregon can play our schedule and go 8-4 tops. That's tough because they've got a lot of talent over there. As much as
I want to be an SEC homer, that's tough to say. Now, to say they go undefeated, I don't know about that.
Probably not.
Probably not. But still, I think they probably play for the SEC championship if they play our schedule. Oregon's good.
Yeah.
Now, hell, they might prove me wrong when they play Ohio State again. I get proved every time I make a statement, I'm proved wrong. So that's why I'm saying, like, we should do betting content, and then we'll say, hey, whatever I bet the opposite, because you're going to win every single time.
So what I'm hearing
had the
is
worst
next
luck.
season you need to just say Arkansas is going to lose every game.
It don't work like that. I gotta believe it. It don't work. I gotta believe that Arkansas is gonna lose and then they'll win. That's how it happens. It happened with the bowl game. Like, I don't understand, and I have
That's great.
good reasons for it. They just everybody proves me wrong. So
Yeah. So before we get out of here, we're going to jump over a quick little bit of basketball news to talk about Muhammad Silla on 3 for basketball recruiting. He is a 6'10" center that is he's a senior. He'll be part of that next year's class. He has gotten his final 3 schools down to a top 3, and that's Georgia Tech, Arkansas, and Oregon. He is ranked per On 3 as the number 1 ranked center in the country. Number 13 overall recruit. 247 has him as 108 nationally, 5th out of Arizona. So he comes in at 6'10", 240. So he's a guy that at this point, I'm not surprised Arkansas is in the hunt there. This will be a massive pickup to add to that already extremely talented recruiting class we have with Malik Thomas, Darius Acuff, Isaiah Sealy, some of those guys. To add a guy like Muhammad Silla that can come in and be a big and be a factor.
Number 1 big in the country, right?
Yeah.
So you got the number 1. You got the number 1 shooting. He's a shooting guard, right?
No, he's a center.
No, not him. The other guy.
Oh, Malik Thomas.
Malik Thomas, and then Acuff is the number 1 point guard, and then they have the number 1 center. I mean, that sounds great to me. Let's go for it.
I was about to say he came on a visit about a month or so ago now, or a month to 3 weeks ago. I guess liked his visit enough. We're in his top 3. Not sure when his commitment date's going to be, but we'll just have to wait and see on that. But we are in the top 3 there, so you gotta love that. Arkansas basketball will be back on the court on Monday, taking on Oakland. Like we said before, maybe doesn't necessarily mean a ton to this Arkansas team as a whole, but maybe for Coach Cal, Adu Thiero, DJ Wagner, some guys like that, Big Z, that maybe means a little bit more to them to come back and get that win. And then, then you're talking SEC play. It's right around the corner. 1 game left in between now and SEC play, and you open up against number 1 Tennessee, which is going to be a tall task for this Arkansas team. But with the headway they've been making, improvement in strides, I like our chances there to at least keep it competitive. Transplant Texan says, when does Calipari sleep? He is always showing up at a recruits game, in the community, at a practice, etc., etc.
Never.
I mean,
he's a vampire.
Lives and breathes.
I mean, if there's one coach on Arkansas's campus that would be a vampire, it would be him. He kind of has that feeling. You know what? He's got the hair for a vampire. You know what I'm saying? Like, he looks like he could play Dracula in a play. He's kind of smooth. Like, that's what I'm going with anyway. That's how
that's the theory. So, I mean, it's excited to see what he's going to do in as we get ready to kick off conference play. It's going to be fun. If we get a commitment from Silla, that's going to be big. I mean, we already have, a top recruiting class to begin with, and that would just make it even better. Big Pen says Calipari press conferences have went from 15 minutes to 8 minutes to 5 minutes. He needed this Christmas break. And I mean, probably true. As much work as he put in with this team, trying to get them to make the jumps that we've seen, probably so. They got a nice 5-day break after that last game. They'll be back at it. I believe they were back in town on the 27th is what I believe I heard him say in his press conference after Arkansas's last game. So now I'm just saying, since Cal is immortal.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
There you go. He doesn't need sleep. But so it'll be fun to see this Oakland game, and then what we do against Tennessee. Cal is the best recruiter in the nation, Bobby says. I mean, it's hard to argue that he's not. I mean, that's one thing that he can do is recruit. That he's shown that time and time again at Kentucky, and he's already showed that in his first recruiting class here at Arkansas. So, yeah, 100%. We'll kind of break down and talk about that Tennessee game in our show on Thursday, and we might be joined with some friends of ours from Tennessee to kind of help kind of break down and preview that game. Don't want to miss Pigpen's comment up here referencing football. He says Bobby only got to pick his quarterback this year. This year he gets to pick his wide receivers, tight ends, and have a say in the O-line. He said, fingers crossed, Bobby, year 2 is Bobby's year. I think that's what everybody, as if you're an Arkansas fan and Pittman's being back, I think that's the one thing that everybody's hanging their hat on, if you will, is year 2 of Bobby's offense, that you've got to see an improvement there. And then that's going to be the big thing. And I think the thing everybody's going to be looking at next season, going into next season, is what does year 2 under Petrino look like?
Yeah. We'll have to see, because this is kind of the first time he's had a year 2 at this level with the transfer portal as well. So
yeah,
we'll see. Because
100%.
like you said, there's a lot of development that happens. And if you don't have those guys to develop and you have to go with guys from the portal each year, we might be seeing year 1 Bobby Petrino every single year. So hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully a lot of it rides on the quarterback. We don't know, but I'm hoping. And I'm excited to see where it goes, at least.
I agree. It's going to be fun to keep up with the offseason and see what happens between now and when we get to August, getting ready to ramp up for game 1. So it's going to be fun. We still got the rest of this basketball season that I think is going to be fun as well. And then, baseball will be here before you know it in just, a month and a half, give or take. Baseball will be taking the field, and, Arkansas baseball is always a good time as well. And we'll kind of start talking about them here in the next month or so as we get ready to start talking about baseball season. But we thank everybody for tuning in today. If you haven't, please go like and subscribe to the page on YouTube. We're 5 subscribers away from hitting that big 500 mark, so that'd be great. If you haven't subscribed to the page, go hit that subscribe button. Helps us out, helps us continuously bring you better content. So, and then, you can find us there on YouTube, and then keep up with us on Facebook, Twitter, or if you're on Blue Sky as well. That's where a lot of our contact is going to be at. You can interact with us there. We'll be back. Transplant Texans, subscribe and hit the bell. Thank you so much. That means a lot. And yeah, we'll be back on Thursday with our regularly scheduled episode. Didn't have that this week due to the holidays, but we'll be right back to it. And Pigpen says, nice seeing the show grow in numbers, Caleb. Good job. I appreciate it. Can't do it without you guys, because that's what we rely on here. Hopefully you like the content, and we'll keep growing, doing better. Let us know things you want to see here. Tag us in Facebook or Twitter, X, whatever you want to do. Hit us up with things that you want to see us maybe talking about more, and we'll continue to improve the show and bring you guys fantastic Razorback content. But, with that being said, we're going to get out of here, and we'll see you guys on Thursday for our regularly scheduled show. And we'll talk more basketball and get ready for SEC conference opener.